Back again, David Eichel, just busy guy, just creating articles, just covering the team, recruits, basketball season's coming up. I'm sure you're starting to put some mental effort into that.
Yeah, media day last week for men and women. The rankings came out, exhibitions in a couple weeks, so we're fully back, man. Really busy time.
I similarly to when I listened to the KF presser for this show, for the first time, maybe last year, I listened to Bluter's like opening media day press conference, but I went back and listened to Jan Jensen's.
Oh yeah,
fantastic. She is amazing to listen to.
Yeah,
I wish that. I love listening to Coach Ferentz. I loved listening to Lisa, Jan. I wish we could get more of them. Like it's so awesome to listen to like elite coaches.
Jan's just a saint though too. On top of everything else, like she's like the most sunshine like demeanor person you've ever met. But there's not 1 ounce of bullshit with her. She's just pretty much authentic through and through.
Like that. Need that. She got a decent recruit, right? Some 4-star post.
Yeah, 6'5" girl from Alaska.
Keep
that in mind. Went all the way down to Alaska. Pretty cool video. Did you see the chance to see the video?
Yeah. She had like a Hawkeyes I'm home shirt on. She
so that's how she told Jan. Jan had no idea before that, and she walked in the room, and Jan just, in Jan fashion, just freaked out. But it was really cool.
Ecstatic. Is that a big pickup? I mean, 4-star. I mean, not bad.
Yeah. I mean, the other part with like when having Caitlin and Megan and Kate Martin and all those players and elevating the program, Tyler, like Iowa's going to have a chance with anybody they want in the country.
Yeah.
Like they're going to be looking more coast to coast. Like there is a real chance for Iowa to get to that blue blood status in women's basketball over the next 5 years or so.
I mean, they need to push for it. If you have the opportunity, you shouldn't squander it. Another recruit in the future, potentially for Iowa basketball. I saw a video of this morning scoring a goal soccer, Madden Greenway. But everything I see about Madden is that she's like, it ain't going to happen.
I'd be surprised at this point if Iowa picked up on her. I think she's very infatuated with going somewhere else other than Iowa. But you know what's kind of interesting? I don't know if you remember this, but when she got offered a scholarship to Minnesota back in 8th grade, she gave an interview to, I think it was gopherhole.com. And they asked her about the offer, and she goes, yeah, I'm really excited about the offer, but I really want to go to Iowa. She told the publication that, and I was like, man.
Gopher Hole is not a good name for a website.
I don't disagree with that.
Gopher Hole. Yeah, I get it. It feels like with a legacy like that, it's going to be like all in or like, and I don't blame the kid for this. It's Chad Greenway. Like his identity is.
He was not offsides, by the way.
He wasn't, and neither was Madden in this goal that I saw last night or from last night. She like scored a winning goal in double OT to send them to the playoffs, I think.
She's crazy,
she's such an athlete.
Yeah, she's a freak. She's been playing varsity basketball since she was in 7th grade. Yeah.
There's no way that, and she's got to have. So this would be her junior year that she's about to play.
Yeah, so she's 2026,
and then she'll have another senior year to play. There's no way.
She could get 5,000 points.
She's gonna have the most points of a high school basketball player in history. I gotta know. I have to know that.
I'll look that up and I'll talk to you next week about it. Okay. We'll have an update on it.
I mean, there's like. She started in 7th grade, averaging 21. So I situation would be where someone would have more, men or women. I don't know how you could have more. It's crazy.
And for people who don't know, it's not like she's a 6'6" post. Like she's a 5'8" guard.
Yeah,
and she's doing all this. So it's not like she's physically just bigger than everybody else and going out there and doing all this.
Yeah, and I don't even know if she's obviously highly ranked. I've watched her dismantle. I don't think she's. Yeah, I don't think she's in the biggest class in Minnesota. She plays for like a smaller private school.
Correct.
So, who knows? Obviously, she's on the AAU circuit, and she's clearly good because she has offers from a ton of people. But like, man, with the legacy ones, especially Greenway, you're like, it'd be nice to have her.
It'd be a
It would
really
be
brutal miss. It'll be a bad, like if she doesn't go to Iowa, I'd say not a bad miss, but it's just like, oh, that's unfortunate. But I think it's an extra sting just because the legacy aspects. But like I said, I mean, they have a 5-star commit already coming next year. I think they can land 2 more 5-stars in 2026. Like they're gonna get talent.
that's the good thing. Is like when you talk about Iowa football, you look at like Proctor or Wampa, Epinesa, even going back to my time, I think Ross Pierschbacher was
Yeah.
in the class of 2014. I don't know if he was a 5-star, but he was a big time recruit out of Cedar Falls in the class below me. And missed on him, and he ended up going to
He was
Bama.
committed to Iowa for a long time, didn't he? Then he flipped to
I'm not sure
Bama.
if he was ever committed. I don't know his commitment story. I did not follow like recruiting at all
I might need to go
until,
back and look that up too. I think
but I
that was
know,
the case though.
but I know he was like he was had to be one of the highest rated recruits. Maybe Lazard was out of that 14 class, but out of Iowa, and we didn't get him right. And
Let me go
it
back
always
to that.
hurts when you miss on the Iowa kids. But for a program like Iowa football, I just sounded like a 14-year-old girl. Football, for a program like Iowa football, when you miss on the 5-star that you have a chance with, you don't usually have the opportunity to be like, oh, it's okay. We'll get another 5-star. We'll get another 4-star, right? Whereas
Yeah.
Iowa women's basketball is currently in a position to be like, okay, if we miss on Madden, which isn't even necessarily like Jan's fault, like they can do everything they can. And even like a harder recruiting push may push her away because she just wants to create her own identity outside of her dad.
Oh, the other part is, I mean, imagine trying to become the best player in school history and carve your own legacy, and you have Caitlin Clark.
That too, right? Like now there is this element of like now every top 10, top 20 women's basketball recruit with the explosion of the sport is going to be like, oh, I'm going to do what Caitlin did at a school of my own, right?
Sure.
But like, are you really going to go do it at Iowa? What are the odds you go do it? Like, you're not going to beat Caitlin's records probably.
Yeah.
So there's all this like that's kind of against us in this fact, but we have the ability to just be like, okay, Addie Deal or whoever, right? Like we've got all of these recruits that are 4 and 5 stars. So I don't.
By the way, Pierschbacher he was the number 11 offensive tackle by 24/7. He was committed to Iowa for 6 months and then flipped to Bama.
Yeah. So when you lose a guy like that, and your only chance is like, oh, he's our in-state guy. It feels better when you can now go across the country and that Iowa women's basketball brand carries more weight than the Iowa football brand does. But this is a football show. 8 minutes worth of women's basketball talk. Maybe we start a women's basketball show. I don't know.
Tell you what, the interest is probably going to be there.
It's probably there. I'm excited for women's basketball season. You got the Caitlin Clark cereal behind you. You start your day with that or coffee today?
I've had neither. I have Fiji water today, Tyler.
Wow.
That's my second one.
Incredibly healthy David Eichel.
Health is wealth, dude.
It is. You're right. Let's get into a little bit of KF. We're going to start on the post-game presser. Okay. I thought that KF had some funny. I love when he has funny stuff. Right? We're talking about like, he's talking about when Phil played for Michigan State back in like the early 80s. He's talking about how
hearing Phil complain about like not being in on that goal line package was hysterical to listen to yesterday.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I saw the clip of him blocking the punt. It's so funny to watch one of. Someone posted it.
Oh, I didn't see that.
They dug it up. I only know Coach Phil Parker of what he is right now, right? Basically, He was a little younger, obviously, when I played for him, but not much has changed. To remember these guys as what I think of myself right now, like a young, strapping lad, with like that can still move his legs and sprint and like be athletic. I had the same feeling when, for the first game of the year, Coach Ferentz was suspended and all the stuff about Coach Wallace, there was an opportunity to like dig up his past and like clips of him scoring at what was it? Co? Did he play for Co?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Watching Coach Wallace like run a route and like break people down and go score. Like it's just so funny to see Coach Parker or Coach Wallace do that. So it's hilarious that Coach, and he even had a smile on his face when he talked about it. He's like, yeah, I remember those games. Like, dude, it's 45 years ago. How do we remember that game?
That's why I love when
But
people are like, Kirk, I question Kirk's decision making from time to time, but for anybody, it's like, oh, he's lost an edge. He's not sharp. I'm like, this dude can like recall any play from any game over the past 40 years, like it happened yesterday.
his mind is plenty sharp. Anyway, a lot of funny stuff. He did mention, we're coming, and I'm going to tie this back into the response from the Ohio State game, but like, obviously they get back on track this week, big win. And he said, and I think this was hyperbole, but he goes, Mary about 40 years ago said this one time. She goes, you guys win, everything's great. You guys lose, everything sucks. And I was like, that is so like football guy mentality. Like, and a lot of the fans carry that same sort of like weight with these games. Is like everything is just a little gloomier when you lose the game, and then like life is good and bright and sunny when you win. The vibe I'm getting from KF, and he mentioned this multiple times, he got emotional in the locker room. If you watch the media that came out from a Hawkeye football, talking about the response, the preparation all week, coming back, playing a huge game, putting it together to beat Washington. Then he mentioned it again in the post game and again in the interview yesterday at the podium. I think there's a real sense of the Ohio State game provided them an opportunity, and this is what great coaches do. You use setbacks and challenges as an opportunity to create togetherness and more identity within your team, and it either cauterizes, maybe, I don't know. It brings you together, or it can start to splinter, right? And it seems like they're using this, and there's a vibe of like, okay, this team's starting to find their identity, starting to feel a little bit of momentum. They're starting to feel like they're putting it together on the field, but also off the field. I got some intangible sense from the locker room video and from Kirk at the podium yesterday. And I don't know if you feel that, but that's sort of what I was getting.
Yeah, I mean, I almost related this past weekend's game against Washington is very, very different circumstances, mind you, but similar feel to me as the Michigan State game in 2020. They had to have that win or the season goes off the rails and the domino effect just takes into place. Because remember, Iowa had 2 very close losses to open up 2020. We know about the offseason issues. If they lose that game to go 0-3, to be quite honest with you, Tyler, this is just my belief. I don't think KF's still here.
He might not be here.
I think that is one of the most important wins of the Kirk Ferentz era that will go down as one of the more underappreciated wins just because of all the adversity leading up to that. Again, different circumstances when you fast forward to now, but when you look at this team and the potential they have and everything, and you see them start off 3-3 and who they lost to, I think it would have been very easy to go off the rails. But instead, what happens? I think that was Iowa's most complete Big Ten win since the 52-point game against Maryland back in 2021. Like, everything just worked together. Like, yes, there was sloppy tackling in the first quarter. Yes, there was even in the second quarter. But that's what complimentary football is. And KF always preaches complimentary football. Saturday was exactly what he means by that. That was how you perfectly encompass complimentary football. Reese Dakin was outstanding. Drew Stevens, 4 field goals. Getting a tackle, too, mind you. First career tackle for the guy.
Got it. Got in there.
Got it. A couple turnovers for the defense. Caleb Johnson did it again. I mean, that's kind of where we're at with this, right?
He feels
and Cade threw touchdown passes against power conference opponents. And Tim Lester's, the way he continues to scheme things has been impressive to me. Getting Dayton Howard open in the middle. And that play to Caleb Johnson for him to get his first receiving touchdown. What a play design. Executed flawlessly.
Guy can cook a little bit.
He can cook. I may have been wrong on him. May have
Lester can
misjudged
cook
him.
a little, man.
Might have misjudged him a little bit.
Sometimes people just gotta trust KF and the staff. They've got the best interest. They're hiring good people. I love what Lester's doing. I cannot wait until next year when all the guys, when the whole offense is in, the playbook's in, and all the guys have had a year of it. We'll talk about that next year. Next year presents its own challenges. I looked at Dakin. It's funny you bring him up. I mean, you were just going through the 3 phases, and this is by far 3 phases. We have not played like this in a long time, and it's amazing what happens when you do, right? Dakin started off there's a little, right? And I caught a little flack for bringing up that he was not doing what he was certainly capable of doing, and that it would need to be better, especially if Iowa was going to be able to rely on the special teams. Stevens has obviously been great. I think, the national awards are funny, but I think part of winning the Groza is you have to have volume, right? You can't go 12 for 12 over the course of 12 games and be considered for the Groza. You just won't be.
The Groza doesn't mean anything to me anymore after they robbed Keith Duncan.
Yeah, that's absolutely unbelievable. First of all,
I'm still heated about that because that still makes absolutely no sense. I don't care that Keith's not in the NFL. He was the best kicker that year, far and away.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a faceless, nameless award for all I'm saying. But as far as like nationally, what a kicker would be doing, I looked at the stats of punting and kicking before we got on here today, and Dakin sneakily is up into 26th in the country, averaging just under 44.5 yards, which is exactly where I said that I think he could and would be able to average. Cold weather has hit Iowa this week. That 30 degrees was brisk this morning when I took my daughter to daycare. That does things to the football, makes it a little harder to kick it as far, but Dakin doing everything we need him to do. A couple 60-yard bombs the other day.
Nukes. That's all we heard about in the offseason was how good he's been. And I think you and I talked, and I said, look, Tory Taylor was great when he first got to Iowa, needed adjusting. Like, Reese is just as good as Tory was when he got on campus. I'm not saying he's going to be Tory. That's impossible expectations. I mean, I think Tory's one of the top 3 punters of all time in college football history.
He might be the best in the NFL
he might be the best. By the way, fun fact, Tory Taylor also had 61-yarder opening kick.
Crazy.
But no, I think Reese has done a great job. He obviously had a handful of bad punts. I mean, the Troy one especially.
Yeah.
But the way he's battled back strong. And the other part, too, is I really don't try to look at average too much. I think there's times where you need to be able to bomb it. But I'm so much more – I think LeVar might be wired like this. I could be wrong. LeVar is much more, okay, where are they inside the 20? What's the percentage about that?
Yeah.
What's the percentage about getting him inside the 10? Like, that, to me, is going to be more impressive than if he's averaging 51 yards a kick. Like, I want to see if Reese can continue to pin them back inside the 20, because if you're flipping the field and you win games the Iowa football Kirk Ferentz way, you got to be able to do that.
He's been huge. I actually think where Dakin sits right now at 26th average, right? Average is great. Your net yardage is really important, right? Because that takes into account if people are returning them. And then it does get a little skewed because it's like, okay, well, how many did you have to punt? You didn't even have the opportunity to kick at 50 yards. You're just trying to kick at 40 and put it out at the 7 or whatever. I think Tory finished his freshman year in 2020 as the 26th best average. So it's, they're lining right up.
Was that COVID year? That was COVID year, right? 2020?
Yes. This is the year he tried to kick it off the ground against Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome play. The funny part about the Stevens thing is like he's 10 of 11, I think, right now. If he had 3 or 4 more kicks, he'd actually probably be in conversations right now as the potential Groza winner. I think your best options right now are like 13 out of 17 is the most field goals attempted this year. There's several people. I think there's 6 people who have 100% field goal percentage who have kicked like more than 8 field goals. In fact, the Michigan State guys, one of them, KF mentioned these tongue in cheek. I think the punting guy is actually incredible. The punter for Michigan State is second in the country average wise, averaging 48 a punt. He and KF said, he's like, unfortunately for us, they might have the 2 best specialists in the country. And that's what I was like, huh, interesting. Let's go check it out.
Yeah.
Field goal guy is like 9 of 9 or 8 of 8, something like that. Great. So obviously we'll be up against that. But what I did notice was KF, and he said this before, it's his way of sort of giving a little inside information, but he's like, we thought we had some opportunities against Washington. We saw some stuff that we thought we could take advantage of, especially in the kicking game. He talked a little bit about how LeVar had seen some things where they could potentially take advantage of some hang time averages. And that's the sort of thing that clicks for me about midway point of the season. Teams now have a bunch of tape. You're now into the conference schedule, several games. So you've now seen your opponents on film versus 2 or 3 or 4 other Big Ten opponents. You basically know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And this is where like good coaches, good programs, good cultures exponentially take off because they know how to take advantage of what they see on tape, tendencies, what they're good at, the feel and the vibe of their team, their players. I think Saturday was just a really big example of that. So that's fun to see. I hope Coach LeVar Woods has something cooked up for a fake. We haven't seen a really fun fake in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was very obvious too when you looked at the stats from Washington that there was going to be something that you could take advantage of, whether it be a block, because their kicking game have been shaky all year. But getting big YA Black in there to get his blocked field goal, to watch him celebrate that, it was fun to see for a guy that I think goes a little bit under the radar and a little bit underappreciated just by how many bodies it takes to block him, especially
he's
down
so
in the
big.
trenches. He's massive. By the way, I did double check on that. Torrey Taylor ended up 25th in net punting his freshman year at 44.1. Reese Dakin is 39th, but he's at 44.6.
Yeah.
This
I checked Torrey Taylor. I checked Torrey's NFL currently this rookie season for him. He's already in the top half of teams, currently 16th in the league at a 48.4 average. There's 10 guys who are averaging 50 or more in the league right now.
That's insane to me.
I don't think people understand what how insane that is. Anyway, so fun stuff from Kirk, talking about again that what did I put down? Response. Yes, response to the Ohio State game. That's the way he worded it multiple times. And I think from what I can glean from Coach's words in the limited time that we got to hear him speak, I have a feeling that response is what the mantra is inside the complex right now, which is great. There's always when you have a sports program, you have to grab onto something. You have to latch onto something and make that. So response is probably what they've been thinking about. And he was emotional about it because they came through. They had a great week of practice. They saw success on the field and they were happy about that. He also said, he had a fun quote. He goes, we were, I think he talked about the 02 team. He's kind of referencing the 04 team. He's like, back then we were 2-2. I think there was some negativity back then as well. And he kind of chuckled. And he's not unaware that people are mad about the Iowa State game and the playoffs, he's still tuned in just as much as he needs to be. And I think he uses that. I think he kind of likes that.
And I think I said this after the Iowa State loss. There are games where Kirk really doesn't open up too much about, but he'll make subtle references about that's gonna be a game that sticks with me for the rest of my life. Years later, he says that. This year's Iowa State game is gonna be one of those games where, trust me, as fed up as a lot of people were with the situation, and Kirk acknowledged he made mistakes in that game. That's gonna be a game that's gonna eat at him probably for the rest of his life.
Probably. I did like at the end of his press conference after Beth Getz congratulated him and they ended the post game. He goes, "All right, see you in 200 more."
Yeah. I would love they caught that.
Oh, they caught it. I'd love another 200 more. It only took him, 25 years. He'd be 85, 90 years old. I'd take it. 90. I mean, people, hey, it'll never happen. He's obviously gone in the next few years. He deserves retirement and to go chill. Although I don't know if he can. But just the fact that he comes back with, "All right, I'll see you in 200 more."
Man, this is a little typical Kirk snort. And he
Like,
said something
yeah,
like,
he's just
don't
like,
print that or something like that.
chew on that little comment. Like, I'll be here. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
here until I'm not. It's funny. Was interesting to hear him just like blatantly, openly say, when talking about Sullivan, he was asked about Brendan. He just like straight up was like, yeah, Brendan has some attributes that Cade doesn't. And I was like, oh, there you go. I mean, like from the headman's mouth, it's like, yeah, he kind of does. Like maybe his legs, his lower body, probably some attributes. He also mentioned how Brendan and Gill really stood out immediately when they came in June with their work ethic, and like
Yeah.
how much they immediately sort of garnered respect from the team, which is a really hard thing to do, especially in the new age of the portal. Respect in a developmental program that does things right, disciplined. Connor Stallion said that like Iowa's one of very few teams in the country that doesn't have somebody stealing plays. Like they do things right at Iowa.
It's worth knowing too. We got a chance to talk to Dayton Howard yesterday, and I asked him about the leadership in the wide receiver room, and I said, I said from the outside, it feels like Jacob Gill's been the guy who has kind of ascended into that leadership role, and it sounds wild, but then you look around the room, Tyler, who's old? Like who's played college football, right?
Yeah, I mean your best option is
Dayton. And a couple great quotes. He said, I'm happy I got my first catch or my first touchdown, but he said, I kind of felt like it should have been Gill's because Gill had spent all day blocking his ass off. So I was a little bit surprised and they called it for me. And then I basically asked him about how Jacob has done that. And he said, he's just so driven. He's very, very poised. He's a leader by example guy. He really doesn't get in people's faces, but he'll talk to his teammates one-on-one, and just the way he goes about the little things and really caring about his craft. He said that just has completely elevated the room, especially that's so riddled with first and second year guys. They said, we know Jacob hadn't done a lot here, but it did not take long at all for him to kind of ascend and assert himself as being one of the go-to guys in the wide receiver room.
Sticks out a lot to me as a former guy, just knowing like, we had guys like we had several guys come in like from other schools, transfer in, whatever. It's not easy to just become any kind of leader, let alone like the guy in an entire room, right? Like, or the leaders of the team. Obviously, we've got Sullivan and Gill past this year, so that's exciting because those can be two guys on the offensive side. Cade is going to be gone at some point, regardless of like the potential of Sullivan being our quarterback this year. He probably will be our quarterback next year, at least right now as it stands. And knowing that maybe outside of the context of the plays of football, the X's and O's, like that's the kind of respect that they have from their teammates, and that's the kind of people they are. That makes me feel good again moving forward. Obviously, we want to use Sullivan, or we'd like to see Sullivan as much as we can now, as well as Gill do well.
I thought it was interesting too when you talk about Sullivan. I think somebody asked Kirk again about how that came into fruition, and he just said, "That's Tim." He said, "I keep my hands off the offense." Like Kirk was kind of pretty quick to say, "Yeah, that's his game."
I put right here, reassured that Lester calls the plays and he makes the decisions. Yeah. Like almost like he saw my tweet, because I tweeted on Saturday. I was like, it is weird that I haven't seen anybody claiming that Kirk calls the plays today.
Yeah.
Only on the bad days, right? So I think people don't understand the intricacies of like the management of an offense. Not just to like, hey, here's the plays we run, but like the lingo.
Yeah.
Install. Like how that gets installed. Like, Kirk is not sitting in the offensive
he doesn't have time, and like that's where I also point to as well. Like if there's a critical play call, they're gonna ask Kirk for his opinion, but he's not making the call, and it's not like he's on the sideline giving the play-by-play because he has so much other crap to deal with, whether it be personnel-wise, whether it be coaching, whether it be talking about the defensive position coaches. Like he's doing too much. He can't do the intricate play-by-play details of it. No. That's why it always stuns me when head coaches are taking over the play calling duties.
Yeah,
because I think at times they're kind of putting on the back burner the actual being the head coach portion. I'm sorry, Tyler. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I was going to say the same thing. It's actually a point of understanding, maybe, or trying to understand the fans' perspective of like, oh, Kirk needs to stop calling the plays. Maybe it makes sense that people think he calls the plays because like he's the head coach, right? And people don't know how it works on a day-to-day basis, but like when they're in camp or when they're in spring ball or whatever, and they're doing install and they break out, they're in 6 different offensive rooms, receivers, tight ends, linemen, running backs, the quarterbacks, I guess 5. And Kirk can't be in all those rooms at all the same time, like being the guy who's installing the plays, teaching them the language and the names of those plays, the checks. Like Lester has to do that and then trust the individual position coaches to also be doing that. It wouldn't even shock me if like Kirk didn't even necessarily know front to back, like the back of his hand, every play call name, like, because there's just so much going on. Yeah. And I don't know if a lot of
and the reason why I'm saying that is because there was a little quote we had yesterday too, where I think he was talking about Brendan Sullivan, or he was talking about somebody on the offense, and he essentially said, yeah, he's still learning the playbook like a lot of us are, or learning the offense like a lot of us are. And I 100% believe KF's in that category of still learning about it.
Yeah. And he also had a quote along the lines of that conversation. It was like, yeah, I kind of sit in the back of the room. Like, I'm just trying to figure it out too. So another interesting note that also kind of surprised Kirk was like, nobody offered Dayton Howard. Like,
yeah, I don't know if that's true about him not having D2 or D3 offers, but he didn't disclose that. But Iowa was the only FBS school to offer him at the time. And I wrote it back at the time, Tyler, like Dayton Howard was one of my favorite pickups they had in that class. I loved his frame. I loved his senior production that he had. I mean, he struck me as a guy that if he could really piece it all together, he could be a dude. Now, he's still got to fill out physically, but like you talk about a typical X receiver for Iowa, like Dayton Howard has the potential to be a dude during his time.
6'5"?
Yeah, he's big. He's tall as me, if not taller than me. Yeah.
My God.
Yeah, no, he's like I said, he's got a frame to him.
If he can fill out, and Coach did mention it, he's not built like he will be. A frame like that,
15 pounds last year,
and he's got more to put on. If he's built like that, and he learns the playbook more, gets involved more,
he's going to be a dude.
6'5", dude. That's not something Iowa has had. I mean, I think Tavon was maybe 6'3".
Yeah, Tavon was 6'3". Brandon Smith, I think, was only 6'2", but he was a freak athlete.
I mean, yeah, he played. You could throw it to him like he was 6'5". It didn't matter.
Pound for pound, I've said this before, I think, pound for pound, like Caleb Johnson's up there. I have never seen anybody built more like a Greek god in my entire life than Brandon Smith. Brandon Smith had muscles on muscles, like 3% body fat, I swear.
Yeah, his genetics were different.
Like
there's some guys who
freak, dude.
When they talk about guys who are built different, Brandon Smith is in the conversation.
Yep.
And then the last note I had, nothing crazy exciting today. We have gone 33 minutes, so something good enough for your ears and entertainment today. But just my final note that KF hates PFF. Like all the coaches, they just hate. Funny. They hate PFF. I mean, they just hate them. And I get why, because like they go back and they have their own grades, and their grades are the ones that matter. They know the play calls, the checks, what a guy actually should have done, what coverage he actually should have been in. PFF, while they're smart and they have football guys, they're also guessing to some extent.
I think it's a good tool when you know how to utilize it and you know when to actually put it in to like anything. Because I mean, I think back to Nate Stanley's 5 touchdowns against Ohio State.
Yeah.
Right. He was not even the highest grade quarterback in the conference that week. They gave a guy who threw 2 picks.
That's one of those where you're like, cool. Okay, I don't care then.
Yeah.
I don't. If he can be not the highest graded and give me 5 tutties and that performance like he did against OSU, I'll take whatever that is. Right?
Yeah. Yep. No, I'm with you on that. I think the other part that kind of stuck out to me, and this is the thing I asked Kirk about. I asked Kirk about Aiden Childs. Like, he's going to be a dude for Michigan State. He's turned the ball over a lot throughout the early portion of his career. But Tyler, you being in the locker room, you can appreciate this. He was voted a team captain as a true freshman.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like, that shows me that he's doing a lot of things right, and he understands what it takes to win. He's going to push him forward any way he can. This is going to be a very opportunistic week for the Iowa defense. When a play breaks down, and Michigan State's O-line might be the worst in Power 4. Like, they are not a good O-line.
I was just going to say, this is a real good time for Herkett, Llewellyn, Graves, YA like they just Brian Allen, they just Deontay, they just happened to catch a little fire. Like Graves obviously had a big game last week. Our D-line performance, I felt, was the best at what all season against Washington. Good time to catch fire because from what I've heard, this Michigan State offensive line is not good. They might feast on Saturday, which would be great.
They're going to have a lot of chances. And the thing with Childs is he really hasn't mastered the art of throwing the ball away yet. So that's why I asked Kirk, I asked Cohen Entringer about it. And I said, look, I think there's a lot of good tools he brings to the table. He obviously isn't afraid to run. But when a play breaks down, he kind of turns into backyard football. Like he's going to throw the ball downfield. He's going to push it vertically. He's going to always try to create something when nothing's there. And, I think the difference between a good and a great quarterback is they understand when to throw the ball away. And that's a great play considering on when the play could break down. But, yeah, by the way, I think Cohen Entringer needs a little bit more talked about too because he had 7 tackles this past weekend. Xavier Wampa, 10 tackles as well.
Wampa came – this was finally the game people wanted to see out of Xavier for sure.
Yeah. So I think there are a lot of good things to take away from the Washington game. But, yeah, Childs can get it done on the ground. He's going to push the ball vertically. And, again, that's going to be a charged-up Spartan Stadium. Iowa's going to have to create turnovers early. And if they can do that, I mean, I think this is a game where Caleb Johnson he could go for 180, 200 again. Like, it's ridiculous.
Would love that. And I would also love to see the Doughboys get like 3, 4, 5 interceptions. It sounds like there's potential for it to go that way. Cool. David joins us once again. Busy guy. He's just here to offer us his knowledge and his access, and we're thankful for it. Another great KF Press review show. You guys will hear the preview, which we don't really preview, but we just talk ball tomorrow, Thursday, 5:10 show on Friday. And then Iowa is in prime time versus the Spartans, trying to nab one first, trying to get the first win in Michigan. Where are they at? They are in East Lansing. In East Lansing since 7 got 6. I'm pretty sure.
I would say back when Chris L. Rucker, and the only reason why Iowa fans know his name is because of the events leading up to the football game.
Yeah. A lot of fireworks around that one. So it's been over a decade since we've won there, and hopefully we can get that done this week. Thanks for tuning into the Walk On Stuff. We'll be back again tomorrow. See you then.